Hi, welcome back to another episode of When We're Not Hustling. I'm Jessie Sage, your host, and I have my amazing co-hosts for the month of August for the after parties, and I will let you two introduce yourselves.
Ashley,
Hi,
please.
I'm Ashley Ramos. I'm Jesse's bestie and assistant and an artist and all a bunch of things. But I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy you're here.
The famed Jesse's girl we all heard about. She was out there somewhere.
Oh my gosh, I can't tell you, like Ashley has this thing that I, I don't I mean,
Oh,
I think Ashley is beautiful, but Ashley has this like magnetic draw that men are just like, oh my God. And I can't tell you how many of my clients are like, does that Luna friend, does she do duos? And I'm like, no, she doesn't. Not a full service sex worker. And then they'll be like,
sorry.
and then every single time she shows back up again, they're like, now, is she doing stuff now? I'm like, no, she's not. Ashley would make a killing.
I know, I know, I know.
I'm not telling you
Yeah,
you should do that. I'm just saying that like there's this weird thing that like it's always you. Like I have a lot of beautiful friends and they're like, "Oh yeah, they're nice." But like what about Ashley?
I
no.
love that. I think we're going to end every episode. But what about Ashley?
What about all the men?
Before we get too far in, I do have to do my producer thing. You guys
Yes.
like, subscribe, support, tell all your friends, follow us on YouTube and where are other places? Everywhere you get your podcasts,
Yeah.
Apple Music and Spotify, and you can leave us reviews. And even more fun, you can follow us on Patreon. And for $5 a month or more, you can get every episode a week ahead and be way cooler than your friends. Just
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah. Today we're talking about Charlotte Shane. Charlotte Shane's a writer and a sex worker. This is her book, her new book. It's a galley copy because I'm very special, so it has no
Mhm.
like, but this is An Honest Woman, and I loved this because we talked about I in a different life in a different podcast that I hosted, I had her on to talk about a different book she wrote called Prostitute Laundry, and that was in the earlier part of her career, and this is in the later part, like kind of retrospectively looking back at it, and that was really interesting to like it kind of like bookended her career for me. Like the memoir she wrote at the beginning and the memoir she wrote at the end, looking back, was super interesting to me.
Was Prostitute Laundry as relevant to you when you read it as An Honest Woman was
No,
this time around?
was
Because this was very relevant to you.
it was very
Yeah.
relevant
But
to me. No, the first book wasn't, and it wasn't when I read it. And I was doing this work when I read it, but like it wasn't because she was talking about being younger and being single. And I've never,
right,
sure, I've never been young. I know for sure I've never been single. Like it's a like she lived like in this one in An Honest Woman. I'm like, yeah, I get that. I've lived that life. Like I've been a wife who's
right,
at the same time doing sex work, a slightly older person, in this profession. I never was the 22-year-old who just like was completely,
right,
I've never been free. I want to say like free in that sense. Like I was a young
Mhm.
mother,
right.
got married when I was 20. I read it wasn't I read Prostitute Laundry. And I thought it was super interesting, but in this detached way of like, oh,
Mm,
that's interesting. This is the perspective of somebody who's running their career in a very different way than me, which is to say
mm,
like who's young and unattached, which is a very different.
right.
And I think when you're younger and unattached, you also have very different types of relationships with your
Mm,
because
Yeah.
they project different things onto you and it's just like a different experience. And then when I read An Honest Woman, I was like, yeah, that I've experienced that. Like that I know about. I know what it's like to have the same client for a long period of time. I know what it's like to try to negotiate those relationships with your marriage. I know what it's like to like fall in love and see that as like this very different sort of experience than the ones that cultivating or having. And also to just be like, um, what I thought was really interesting about the book is what it's like to be conflicted about like heterosexuality and heterosexual
Mm,
norms.
yeah.
To be like marriage doesn't make sense, and then to be like, okay, yes, I will marry you. You
It's nice. Yeah, this is nice. And also, like, regular sex is nice too. Like, actually, I like this
Mhm.
so much better because I get to feel like emotions and like
Yeah.
all of these things. Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. That little shame of being, for me, I'm not going to project this on anyone else, but of being a queer person, as my amazing stepdaughter put it, you could pick from the whole world, like everyone. Great. And of course, she finished it by saying, and you picked my dad. But she's got a point. There is a little bit in me that's like, I'm a little bit of a traitor. I totally ended up in this, like, it's just, yeah, I'm in a cis relationship. I'm very cis presenting. No one knows. Here I am hiding again. There's a little bit of that.
Mhm.
Like, after everything in the world available, this is what I wanted. It's like, well, I did. It turns out
Yeah.
this is what I
You just
wanted.
kind of, yeah, I can kind of relate to that as Jesse and I talk about sometimes. Like, I'm in this relationship as I love him so much, but it's so funny. Like, he's like very normal, only ever dated like really eccentric people. Like, and
Yeah,
it's like, wow, am I really just like kind of in the suburbs of Pennsylvania living with a white man?
right. Or these moments where you're like,
I'm like,
well, I'm totally happy, but this really isn't how I thought it was.
right.
I thought there'd be something a little more
Exactly.
controversial over here.
Right. I agree.
I thought it was
Yeah.
sweet when she was like, I feel like I have all these like skills that I should dust off, but
Yes.
then I'm like, I just kind of like being inside of me. That's nice. I was like, there was something so wholesome and sweet about that.
I was like,
I
oh no,
thought
that's
so
fine.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how she spoke about the horror he would experience if he heard her even insinuating that he might want to be with someone else.
Yeah.
And just the, like, I'm poly. We went into this marriage like, yeah, you, forever you, but also, uh, also potentially everything else. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and I just the there is it wasn't a restricted place or a controlling place. It was just how he honestly was. He was just like, well, I
Mhm.
just want you. Why wouldn't I want that? And
Yeah.
that for someone with her background to end up with someone of his proclivities
Yeah.
is just, I love
Yeah.
it. There's something really cute in
It is cute.
it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that like I really resonated with in the book, that I think most people who are in sex work for a long time, any kind of sex work, it could also be online work or whatever, anyone who has like a long-term client, is that she talked a lot, and I think this is really important about like this odd experience of like intimacy, but not like intense
Mhm.
intimacy. But then like when she found out Roger died by reading it, and she found his obituary, this
Right.
10-year client who she was really, really involved with, who suddenly she was like, he's not calling anymore. Like, what happened to him? Oh, he died, but nobody called me to tell me that because we're secret relationships, and
Right.
Mhm.
that's
Even secret employees.
mhm.
Like there was the discussion of when the relationship ended, how it felt like a breakup and a firing, which it is both.
Yeah,
But
Mhm.
also, there's no obligation.
right.
There's no obligation on their part. They can just go away.
Right.
And there goes the job, and there goes the friend, and there goes the lover. And there's just, there's a lot of bravery in that, in what you guys do with that.
Yeah, there's a
I,
she was talking, and I totally related to this too, where she was like, for my own sense of like self-worth and professionalism, I'm also not going to be like, why don't you call me anymore?
Right.
What happened to
Right.
you? You know,
But
when
you still think it. You're like,
you think it because you've
but
like
why? What happened?
you have sex with someone once every 2 weeks for 5 years and then they just disappear and then you're like,
Yeah.
where'd they go?
And if that's a relationship between two people without a financial or agreement, that's
Mhm.
considered one of the worst crimes. They
Yeah,
ghosted you
right.
without even telling you after seeing you every 2 weeks for 5 years. What? But when there's a financial contract, it's like, well, that's the job.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
It
but they
requires a
still
lot.
ghosted you.
Mhm. Requires a lot of being able to compartmentalize, I guess. And that's another thing that I really
Mm.
liked about Charlotte's interview is that she's so like emotionally open because she was talking about the fact that like when all of that happened, she was like, gotta move on because obviously you still have to pay bills. Like I've had
Yeah.
same experiences where clients just for whatever reason are like they were there and then they're gone, And I'm like, well, I don't have time
Right.
to sit and think about this. I like still need to pay my mortgage this month, so I need to find a new client. So now I'm doing all this other stuff to like get things back to equilibrium. Well, she said when she sat down and wrote it, she was crying through like writing about this relationship. And she was like, and it's so interesting because it's so complex because it's not like she was like, I wasn't in love with him, but like I loved him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
loved she talked at the beginning about like how she could go to a desert island and she can't imagine any person who would be there with her that she wouldn't in some way get attached to. And I get that.
That's so relatable. I would feel the exact same way, I think. Like you would form like some sort of emotional like attachment to this other person.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting just as an outsider who doesn't do that work and hasn't done that work. It's so fascinating to me because I told you, Jesse, I was reading Down the Drain by Julia Fox, which is a lot of it was very interesting. Some of it was, I kind of got annoyed at. But a lot of what you guys are talking about in this episode, as far as like clients and then help people, especially wealthy clients, maybe can kind of just like pick people up and put them down like whenever they want. They can just kind of like pull strings.
Yeah.
And that's something that kind of like happened to her. She had like this guy that like rescued her, quote unquote, from being a dominatrix. And he like got her an apartment. And for years and years, that was her like world, but she didn't love him.
Yeah.
And then she fell in love and it was like really conflicting for her because she's always wanted like security. And she knew like she only saw this guy like once a week. Like he paid for everything, but she didn't see him like every day. And just like how sticky that was and how really complicated that arrangement became when she fell in love because this other guy was not wealthy, but like could offer her something like emotionally that maybe she's never had. And I don't know, it just feels like I tried to like put myself in that position like mentally and thinking like, wow, that would be really hard. I actually wouldn't know who to choose from because I grew up in poverty. I would think maybe I would probably maybe stay with a guy that like could pay my bill. I
Right.
don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, so what you're saying about like how complex these like arrangements can be, I think is really important. And like a lot of escorts will say like, oh, I tried sugaring, for example, and realized that like actually that's way too complicated when things are amorphous like that. And I would rather just have people pay for like individual dates enough
Hmm.
that I can pay for my own apartment because otherwise things get very entangled in like this sticky way. She also talked about that emotionally, where she said that um he uh made it clear that like he loved her and it was when that gets uttered that the relationship starts to fall apart. And I think that that was really interesting and really important because I've also had that experience where like when you kind of break, it's almost like a breaking of the fourth wall. And once you do
Mm,
that, then it's like really hard to keep the boundaries, and things start to become um murky. And that that's really interesting to me. This idea of, and that she articulated it, that as soon as though as soon as people uttered the like um
Mm,
feelings, it moved, that was like the beginning of the end of the
mhm.
relationship.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we're social creatures, right? It's just like one of the things I wish would be taught early in school, some basic sociology. And like, I think it's more common than we admit that anyone could bond with anyone.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
mean, humans will pack bond with toasters, you know. They'll go find the toaster that got dented because maybe it won't get bought.
Yeah.
You know, like we're made for that. But well, so I think that my husband made these up, but he may have gotten them somewhere. He's a really smart guy. It's one of the things I think is cute about him. But
Mhm.
like we've got these things, right? Like safety, comfort, social standing. Those are the three that he always references. And I will give up two to get one,
Mm.
but I
Mhm.
won't, I will at any point in my life be seeking one of them, right? And I think that's where
Mhm.
those conflicts come in. That's what that made me think of when I'm like, I say, grew up in poverty. Do I pick financial security, which gives me comfort? Do I pick, but more importantly, it gives me safety? Do I pick love that gives me comfort and also social standing? I don't have a lot of social standing with this once a week arrangement. I can't bring this person home. I can't, like, I think that's where I see a lot of conflict come in is like
Yeah,
this as social creatures, we need bonds,
right,
but which ones? Do
right.
I want the ones that guarantee I eat every night? Or do I want the ones that
Yeah,
guarantee I feel warm and fuzzy every night? Like, what am I willing to give up? Am I going to cuddle with my lover in a dark alleyway, hungry, and
yeah,
be okay?
yeah.
Some
Your
people can't.
priorities,
I don't
yeah, your
know.
priorities shift too
Yeah.
over time. Over time, I would think like when I was younger, if I was Julia Fox in that situation in my 20s or something, I would choose the person that was going to keep a roof over my head. But today, it would be the totally opposite situation because I know also the value of like and rarity of human connection and love and all that. And also, it's less chance that I would be Delulu, as the kids like to say, about some random guy that like I think that I'm in love with. You know what I mean? So
Right. Yes.
Passage that I'm looking for, and I think it's really great. She said, she's talking about them talking. I listened as I usually did while on the clock, cloaking my immediate reaction until I could discern what the client required or expected of me in response. These emotional disclosures were a perpetual hazard, and and their arrival signaled the beginning of the relationship's end. I wanted clients to be enamored with me because I made more money and could sometimes get away with doing less if they were. But to fall so in love that they needed to seriously discuss it with me was a sign of their descent into needy mistress mode, wanting more
hmm.
than what was offered, resenting what they were given. The relationship cracked under the pressure of their unrequited intensity, and one or both of us would eventually find it too miserable to continue. And it seems to me like, and I thought that was so well put because it seems to me like that is often what ends up happening, that if things bubble to the surface so much that they like require to be spoken, that then the pressure in the relationship and the dynamic shifts so much that one or both people are like, we can't do this anymore. It's not like meeting those.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I think because I like I said, I don't know what this is like um intimately, but like I would think that no matter how close you get to a client, at least personally, I don't know, there's always going to be some level of performance even if you can like have a great deep conversation with someone, and then somebody like the client at some point just like stops understanding that this is sort of a simulation of a reality instead of actual reality, that like
Yeah.
their their love for the person that they don't actually truly know. Like people can fall in love with you, Jesse, but they don't know your life and your family and your children, you know, and
Yeah,
your yeah, they just don't know that. So like it's actually not possible for them to actually love you, even if they think it or feel it really, really intensely.
Get like
yeah,
I'm a very like authentic person, but they get like the best version of that.
Right. Yeah.
Get
yeah.
like the um I'm never in a bad mood. I'm never not in the mood. I'm never like
Exactly.
stressed to listen to them talk, which I am with my partner.
Mhm.
You
You're
know,
Yeah.
not a
It's
sweaty, dirty
yeah.
mess who is covered in spaghetti sauce and just had
oh,
to change a diaper. You're not that.
yeah,
You're that person doesn't show up.
that's the thing that's funny is like for me, it's also like I enjoy getting to play the best version of myself. Like that for me feels
Yeah.
good. I'm like, oh, I'm very
Yeah,
and like,
I relate to that. Emily on stage is freaking amazing. That
I,
lady has no social anxiety. She's so calm. She's always excited to play for you. She's got clever things to say. She's smart. She's pretty. She knows how to do her stuff. Like, that's my avatar, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
Like, but please don't talk to me 10 minutes after the show if you want to meet that
Oh my
lady.
gosh.
it's real, but it's not like it's one part of us. And it's like
Yes.
of all of these different parts, and I tap into the like sexy part, like when I go
Right.
and that feels really good for me and it feels good for them. But to like confuse that with like this is all there is, that's
Yeah.
Hmm.
like weird. But I think going back to what you were saying, Ashley, is that like about the like picking somebody up and putting them back down again. Part of the reason to like that it always will be a little bit different is because like if you're doing the work, you have to protect yourself against the fact that like you are at some point going to be you can't get so emotionally invested that you can't just move on the next day if they like decide that this isn't working anymore.
Hmm.
Yeah.
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 I don't know, which
Which
is
has to be part of the attraction too, right?
yeah.
Like, I think that has to be very attractive to have a person who's fully present and available for you and the best
Hmm.
version of themselves, but also reserved a little bit because
Yeah.
we can
Yeah.
sense neediness in other people. And you don't have that emotional need. You can't afford to have that emotional neediness with them. So there's just this, oh, talk about the perfect woman. Just always there, always wants you, no neediness, like, oh, okay, bye.
Right. And if they're seeking someone who's like complex and interesting, like Jesse, I'm sure you have like amazing conversations with these people about all sorts of different things
Right.
and philosophies and whatever. But like,
It's fun.
it's as, yeah. So if they're like, I want a woman that's not like other women, you know, they could have that if they wanted to. But of course, once you start, like, there is no way for them to see like the other parts that make you like a human being, like fully
Yeah.
realized.
Yeah. I'm also a workaholic, and the reason that I have interesting things to say is because I spend a lot of time working. You know,
Yeah.
Hmm.
that means that I'm not actually sitting around and having conversations unless like paying me to do that.
You're exactly, yeah, 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 yeah.
To
But
say,
they could easily like peruse, like if they knew like about your writing first or something, let's say, like that might be the draw for like some people, or you know, they're,
no,
oh, she's an intellectual.
I just mean that the reality isn't as great because what it actually
Right.
looks like in reality is me spending a lot of time sitting at my desk and writing and like being by myself and saying, I don't have time to have this conversation. I'm doing something else.
Right.
It's that romantic.
Yeah, we're three incredibly creative people. I think that this deserves to be said, and I hope that this is also true for you ladies, that like being a productive artist includes being a dick a lot of the time.
Oh God.
Like
Yeah.
it is just part of it. Get the
Hmm.
fuck away from me. I have to work. If I
Yeah.
lose this, it's gone. Go away. And like
Right. Yeah.
that is so shitty to live with. I know because I married another artist and we do the same kind of art. And let me just tell you, that mirror is not always complimentary.
This is why
I'm
I'm not
pointing at
with an
his
artist.
bedroom. I'm like, there it is. But
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
but it's just, I feel like it's sometimes portrayed, but only in this tortured artist way. And
Yeah.
then
Mm-hmm.
there's like this illusion that like, oh, well, not everyone is, and maybe mental illness. It's like, yeah. I have yet to. I've worked on creative teams. I love creative people. I date
Mm-hmm.
them. I marry them. I collect them. We're all dicks,
Yeah.
especially when we're working and creating. And that is just like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Partner will get mad at me and they'll be like, are you listening to me? And I'm like, No, actually, I'm not
oh,
because I'm writing my piece in my head and you're disrupting it. And just don't talk to me right now because
Mhm.
they do like my head with the things that they're thinking. And then the thing that I was trying to make is gone.
Yeah.
yeah.
And yeah.
And,
And
I'm not going to stop, but I can acknowledge that that's not easy.
out,
Yeah.
right.
Which is why when I want to work on a painting that's been taking me maybe a couple of years, I lock myself in my studio by myself so that other people don't have to deal with that. You
yeah.
know what I mean? Because like that's probably the only time where I get like really frustrated or like if someone breathes around me wrong or something, because
Hmm.
I'm otherwise very, very nice and trying to like be overly accommodating to people. But yeah,
Yeah.
I get
Paintbrush in my hand, you can just go ahead and fuck right off.
yeah.
I have my own room with a lock on the door where all of my creative things are, and so does he. And I
Yep.
really think that that is how we are able to coexist and create.
Yeah.
it's
It
yeah,
was
it's
said we would downsize when the two older kids left. Well, guess what? The two older kids have left. There's no way we're downsizing. We are just like because we're like now I have my office, they have an office. We're building a dark room in the basement, like then so they
yeah,
down there
Yeah.
another bench to do the other kinds of craft projects. Like we have stuff to do, but we need to do them by ourselves in like our different corners of the house, which is
yeah,
perfect. It's so
yes.
anyways, I think that's probably enough for this episode, but I think you all should read the An Honest Woman and you should also read Prostitute Laundry. And both of them together is really interesting because it shows this like lifespan of somebody who was for many, many years at different life stages in sex work and also
Hmm.
charming and delightful.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think she mentioned that the next book probably will not be about sex work.
Yeah, she
She
said,
felt that she had kind of covered what she had to say about that, which makes that a beautiful pair of books to read together. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
she's like, I don't want to learn about sex work anymore, but I feel very supported by the community. I think I remember her saying, which I think is wonderful.
yeah, I love that. Hey, this is the When We're Not Hustling after party, and I would be silly if I didn't remind you to like us, subscribe, share it with all your friends, and follow us on every platform you can find us on.
nice. I'm Jessie Sage. I am the host of When We're Not Hustling.
I'm Ashley. I'm Jesse's best friend and artist and all the good stuff.
Awesome.